Belarus, 1940s. War. Occupation. The Germans, having seized vast territories, encountered unprecedented resistance. The partisan movement, like a huge living organism, stood in the enemy's path, and one of its most important arteries was the Railway War. The supply of German troops, their ability to transfer equipment and soldiers, depended on the steel main lines. And this is where Konstantin Zaslonov comes to the forefront, a man whose name became a symbol of the struggle on the railway. His activities, his ingenuity and courage, turned ordinary rails into a deadly trap for the occupiers. This was not just sabotage, it was a strategic game where every blown-up bridge, every stopped echelon, deprived the enemy of precious time and strength. Zaslonov became a legend whose story deserves to be told. To understand the origins of this struggle, one must look into the past, to the very beginning of Konstantin Zaslonov's path. He was born in 1909 in the small town of Ostashkov, in the Tver region. This place, on the shore of Lake Seliger, was picturesque, but life there was not easy. Konstantin's family was simple, working class, and from an early age, he learned the value of labor and responsibility. His father, Sergei Efimovich, was a man of strict but fair rules. He worked on the railway as a track engineer, and perhaps it was this circumstance that sowed the first seeds of interest in steel highways in young Kostya. His mother, Evdokia Petrovna, was the keeper of the hearth, creating warmth and comfort in their modest home despite all difficulties. Konstantin had 7 brothers and sisters, which spoke of a large and close-knit family where everyone had to contribute. This shaped in him a sense of collectivism, mutual assistance, and the ability to find common ground with different people, which would later prove very useful in his partisan struggle. Konstantin's childhood fell on the pre-revolutionary years and the period of the new country's formation. It was a time of great changes, when yesterday's peasants and workers gained access to education and new opportunities. Zaslonov was no exception. He studied at the Ostashkov Unified Labor School of the second stage, where he proved to be a diligent and capable student. He easily mastered exact sciences, especially mathematics and physics. But in addition to academic success, Konstantin was an active, lively boy. He loved sports, participated in amateur performances, and was fond of technology. Even then, he showed leadership qualities. He knew how to organize children, to captivate them with an interesting idea, and, importantly, always took responsibility. This was no accident. In the atmosphere where Konstantin grew up, deeds, not words, were valued, and from childhood he was accustomed to proving his worth through actions. After graduating from school in 1927, Zaslonov did not ponder long about choosing a profession. The railway, familiar from childhood through his father's stories, beckoned him with its power and strict logic. He entered the Veliki Luki Railway Vocational School, where he plunged headfirst into studying locomotives, rails, signals, everything that made up the complex world of steel roads. Here, he did not just acquire knowledge, he absorbed the spirit of the railway, becoming a part of it. He mastered the profession of a machinist, learned to understand mechanisms, to feel the rhythm of movement, to foresee possible breakdowns. These years of study became the foundation for his future professional activity. It was then that he truly fell in love with the railway, and this love, paradoxically, would later become his main weapon against the enemy. After graduating from vocational school in 1930, Zaslonov, already an experienced machinist, went to work on the railroad. His path led to the far east, to the depot of Vyazemskaya station. There, in harsh conditions, he honed his skills, learned to handle equipment and work as part of a team. But fate led him further. In 1935, Konstantin moved to Belarus, to Orsha station. This city, located at the intersection of important railway lines, would become for him not just a workplace, but a second home, and later, a battlefield. In Orsha, Zaslonov quickly established himself as a talented and responsible specialist. His diligence, deep knowledge of locomotive mechanics, and ability to find common ground with the team did not go unnoticed. Just a year later, in 1936, he became deputy head of the locomotive depot, and then, in 1937, its head. This was a rapid career growth, testifying to Zaslonov's outstanding abilities. In this position, Konstantin revealed himself not only as an engineer, but also as a manager. He did not just lead. He modernized the depot's work, introduced new repair methods, and improved technological processes. Under his leadership, the Orsha depot became one of the best on the Belarusian railway. Zaslonov was not an armchair boss. He knew perfectly every screw, every mechanism of a locomotive, could take the helm himself, personally check the quality of repairs. His engineering talent manifested itself in everything, from optimizing fuel consumption to improving traffic safety. He saw potential in every worker, knew how to motivate people, and created an atmosphere of mutual assistance and professionalism. This ability to unite the team, to inspire people to solve complex problems, would become an invaluable quality when Zaslonov had to create an underground organization and a partisan detachment. His authority among railway workers was indisputable. Colleagues respected him for his fairness, competence, and humanity. Zaslonov was not just a boss, he was a leader, capable of leading others. His managerial talent, his engineering knowledge, and his deep understanding of railway operations, honed over the years, would become the foundation for future sabotages. He knew all the weak points of the railway infrastructure, understood how to disable echelons with minimal effort, how to paralyze traffic on strategically important sections. This knowledge, acquired in peacetime, would turn into a formidable weapon in the fight against the enemy. And so, the summer of 1941 arrived. The morning of June 22nd in Orsha, as throughout the country, was peaceful and sunny. Nothing foreshadowed the catastrophe that would befall the peaceful inhabitants. Konstantin Zaslonov, the head of the locomotive depot, as always, was at work, immersed in his usual concerns. But within a few hours, this world collapsed. The words of the announcer on the radio, reporting the treacherous attack of fascist Germany, sounded like a death sentence. The Great Patriotic War had begun. The first days of the war were a real shock for Belarus. The Germans advanced rapidly, their tank wedges dissecting the defenses, aviation dominating the air. Zaslonov, like millions of other Soviet citizens, found himself at the epicenter of these tragic events. By mid-July, Orsha was occupied. In a matter of months, the peaceful city was turned into ruins, and its inhabitants into refugees. Konstantin, realizing the gravity of the situation, received an order for evacuation. Along with thousands of other railway workers, he had to transport valuable equipment, rolling stock, and, of course, his people to the deep rear. It was a race against death under continuous bombing and shelling. Under his leadership, a significant part of the depot's property was saved, which became an important contribution to the common cause. Evacuated to Moscow, Zaslonov did not stand aside. His knowledge and experience were in demand. He was appointed head of the locomotive depot at Kalinin Station, where he continued his work to ensure the smooth operation of railway transport. In wartime conditions, when every echelon was worth its weight in gold, his organizational skills and technical genius were fully manifested. He arranged for the repair of locomotives, trained young specialists, worked practically without sleep or rest. It would seem that he was safe, far from the front, engaged in important and necessary work. But his heart yearned for his homeland, for the occupied land. He was tormented by the thought that he could do more, that his knowledge and skills could be used to fight the enemy where he was in charge. Moscow, though a frontline city, still gave a sense of relative security. But Zaslonov could not find peace. He knew that his native Orsha, his Bielorussia, groaned under the German yoke. He understood that the railway, his element, had become the main transport artery for the occupiers, through which reinforcements, equipment, and ammunition flowed. And it was there, on these steel tracks, that the most sensitive blow could be dealt to the enemy. The idea of underground work, of organizing sabotage on the railway, matured in his head. He saw how the fascists used the railway to transfer troops to the front, to export plundered riches. And he knew how to stop this flow. Despite the personal danger, the risk to his own life, he made a firm decision: to return. To return to where he was so needed, where his experience and knowledge could become a weapon in the hands of the avenging people. It was an incredibly bold decision, dictated not only by patriotism, but also by a deep sense of responsibility. He could not stand aside when his land was burning under the feet of the occupiers. He understood that his place was where the struggle was going on, where the fate of the country was decided every day. And, despite all persuasions, all logical arguments, he made this decision, which would change not only his life but also the course of history. October 1941. A cold wind sweeps through the ruined streets of Orsha, carrying the scent of burning and despair. It is into this deathly silence, into this city ravaged by war and occupied by the enemy, that Konstantin Zaslonov returns. He does not return as a hero on a white horse, but as the humble engineer Konstantin Petrovich, with false documents and a legend meticulously crafted in Moscow. His mission is not merely to return, but to infiltrate the very heart of the German war machine, the railway depot he once headed. Step by step, cautiously, like a sapper in a minefield, Zaslonov penetrates the city. Every glance, every word is a potential trap. His goal is to secure a place in the depot without attracting attention. It was a true game of survival where any mistake could cost him his life. Zaslonov's cover was his work supplying fuel to German units. Under the guise of a supply engineer, he obtained permission to work at the depot, where, it seemed, everything was under the control of the occupiers. But Zaslonov knew it wasn't that simple. He knew his people, knew that beneath the mask of obedience lay a burning hatred for the invaders. His first step was to establish contacts. He didn't rush headlong into the fray, but acted subtly, gradually. He sought familiar faces among the depot workers, among those he trusted before the war. Gradually, through hints, through careful conversations, he began to test people for reliability. And such people were found. Those who had not broken, who were waiting for a signal, who were ready to fight. The first to join his underground group were his former colleagues, proven by time and shared endeavors. Among them were engine drivers, fitters, track workers, people who knew the railway inside out. They became the core of the future organization. Zaslonov managed to awaken the spirit of resistance in them, to remind them that they were not just cogs in the German machine, but part of a great people capable of struggle. He convinced them that even a small act of sabotage could become part of a great victory. The process of creating the underground was long and agonizing. Each new member of the organization was thoroughly vetted, each step planned with filigree precision. Conspiracy was paramount. Meetings took place in the most unexpected places, in abandoned sheds, on secluded streets, under the cover of night. Code words, conventional signs, legends, all became part of their daily lives. They learned to trust each other implicitly, for their lives and the fate of their homeland were at stake. The depot, which had once been a symbol of peaceful labor, now became the center of an underground struggle. Zaslonov, using his knowledge and authority, managed to gain access to the most important areas of work. He studied the schedules of German echelons, their routes, and the types of cargo being transported. He saw German officers and soldiers scurrying around the depot, feeling completely in charge, and in his eyes, the fire of determination ignited. The first steps in preparing for sabotage were cautious but confident. At first, these were minor nuisances, damaged parts, delays in repairs, breakdowns. The Germans attributed this to sloppiness or a lack of spare parts. But Zaslonov and his men knew this was just the beginning. They gathered information, accumulated strength, and prepared for the main strike. They knew that their main weapon was not bombs and weapons, but knowledge of the railway, its vulnerabilities, and an indomitable desire to fight. And so, when everything was ready, when every member of the underground was in their place, Zaslonov gave the signal for the start of a real railway war. He understood that every act of sabotage was an enormous risk, but a justified one. He believed in his people, in their courage and loyalty, and they did not fail him. Their actions were precise and effective. Each explosion, each stopped echelon caused pain in the enemy's logistics. Orsha, turned into ruins, came alive again. But now it was a life of resistance, a life of struggle. And at the head of this struggle stood he, Konstantin Zaslonov, the railwayman who became a partisan, whose name would soon resound throughout occupied Belarus, striking terror into the enemy. He returned to the inferno to ignite it even further. October 1941. A cold wind sweeps through the ruined streets of Orsha, carrying the smell of burning and despair. It is into this deathly silence, into this city ravaged by war and occupied by the enemy, that Konstantin Zaslonov returns. He returns not as a hero on a white horse, but as the humble engineer Konstantin Petrovich, with forged documents and a legend meticulously crafted in Moscow. His mission is not just to return, but to infiltrate the very heart of the German war machine, the railway depot he once headed. Step by step, cautiously, like a sapper in a minefield, Zaslonov penetrates the city. Every glance, every word is a potential trap. His goal is to secure a position in the depot without attracting attention. It was a real game of survival, where any mistake could cost him his life. Zaslonov's cover was his work supplying fuel to German units. Under the guise of a supply engineer, he obtained permission to work in the depot where, it seemed, everything was under the occupiers' control. But Zaslonov knew it wasn't that simple. He knew his people. He knew that beneath the mask of obedience lay a burning hatred for the invaders. His first step was to establish contacts. He didn't rush headlong into the fray, but acted subtly, gradually. He sought familiar faces among the depot workers, among those he had trusted before the war. Gradually, through hints, through cautious conversations, he began to test people for reliability. And such people were found. Those who had not broken, who were waiting for a signal, who were ready to fight. The first to join his underground group were his former colleagues, proven by time and shared endeavors. Among them were engineers, fitters, trackmen, people who knew the railway inside out. They became the core of the future organization. Zaslonov managed to awaken in them the spirit of resistance, to remind them that they were not just cogs in the German machine, but part of a great people capable of struggle. He convinced them that even a small act of sabotage could become part of a great victory. The process of creating the underground was long and agonizing. Each new member of the organization was thoroughly vetted, every step planned with filigree precision. Conspiracy was paramount. Meetings were held in the most unexpected places, in abandoned sheds, on secluded streets, under the cover of night. Code words, conventional signs, legends, all became part of their daily lives. They learned to trust each other implicitly, for their lives and the fate of their homeland were at stake. The depot, which had once been a symbol of peaceful labor, now became the center of the underground struggle. Zaslonov, using his knowledge and authority, managed to gain access to the most important areas of work. He studied the schedules of German echelons, their routes, the types of cargo being transported. He saw German officers and soldiers scurrying around the depot, feeling like complete masters, and in his eyes, the fire of determination ignited. The first steps in preparing for sabotage were cautious but firm. At first, these were minor nuisances, damaged parts, delays in repairs, accidental breakdowns. The Germans attributed this to sloppiness or a lack of spare parts. But Zaslonov and his men knew this was just the beginning. They gathered information, accumulated strength, and prepared for the main strike. They knew that their main weapon was not bombs and weapons, but knowledge of the railway, its vulnerabilities, and an indomitable desire to fight. And so, when everything was ready, when every member of the underground was in their place, Zaslonov gave the signal for the beginning of a real railway war. He understood that every act of sabotage was a huge risk, but a justified one. He believed in his people, in their courage and devotion, and they did not disappoint. Their actions were precise and effective. Each explosion, each halt of an echelon echoed with pain in the enemy's logistics. Orsha, turned into ruins, came alive again, but now it was a life of resistance, a life of struggle. And at the head of this struggle stood he, Konstantin Zaslonov, the railway man who became a partisan, whose name would soon thunder across occupied Belarus, striking terror into the enemy. He returned to the inferno to ignite it even more strongly. October 1941. A cold wind sweeps through the ruined streets of Orsha, carrying the smell of burning and despair. It is into this deathly silence, into this city ravaged by war and occupied by the enemy, that Konstantin Zaslonov returns. He returns not as a hero on a white horse, but as the modest engineer Konstantin Petrovich, with fake documents and a legend meticulously crafted in Moscow. His mission is not merely to return, but to infiltrate the very heart of the German war machine, the railway depot he once headed. Step by step, carefully, like a sapper in a minefield, Zaslonov penetrates the city. Every glance, every word, a potential trap. His goal is to secure a position in the depot without attracting attention. It was a true game of survival, where any mistake could cost him his life. Zaslonov's cover was his work supplying fuel to German units. Under the guise of a supply engineer, he gained permission to work in the depot, where it seemed everything was under the control of the occupiers. But Zaslonov knew it wasn't that simple. He knew his people, knew that a burning hatred for the invaders lay hidden beneath a mask of submission. His first step was to establish contacts. He didn't rush headlong into the fray, but acted subtly, gradually. He sought familiar faces among the depot workers, among those he had trusted before the war. Gradually, through hints, through cautious conversations, he began to test people's reliability. And such people were found. Those who had not broken, who were waiting for a signal, who were ready to fight. The first to join his underground group were his former colleagues, proven by time and shared endeavors. Among them were engine drivers, fitters, track workers, people who knew the railway inside out. They became the core of the future organization. Zaslonov managed to awaken in them the spirit of resistance, to remind them that they were not just cogs in the German machine, but part of a great people capable of struggle. He convinced them that even a small act of sabotage could become part of a great victory. The process of creating the underground was long and agonizing. Each new member of the organization was thoroughly vetted, every step planned with filigree precision. Secrecy was paramount. Meetings took place in the most unexpected places, in abandoned sheds, on secluded streets, under the cover of night. Code words, secret signs, legends, all became part of their daily lives. They learned to trust each other implicitly, for their lives and the fate of their homeland were at stake. The depot, which had once been a symbol of peaceful labor, now became the center of the underground struggle. Zaslonov, using his knowledge and authority, managed to gain access to the most important areas of work. He studied the schedules of German echelons, their routes, the types of cargo being transported. He saw German officers and soldiers scurrying around the depot, feeling completely in charge, and in his eyes, the fire of determination ignited. The first steps in preparing for sabotage were cautious but confident. At first, these were minor nuisances, damaged parts, delays in repairs, accidental breakdowns. The Germans attributed this to sloppiness or a lack of spare parts. But Zaslonov and his people knew that this was just the beginning. They gathered information, accumulated strength, prepared for the main blow. They knew that their main weapon was not bombs and weapons, but knowledge of the railway, its vulnerabilities, and an indomitable desire to fight. And so, when everything was ready, when every member of the underground was in their place, Zaslonov gave the signal for the start of a real railway war. He understood that every act of sabotage was a huge risk, but a justified risk. He believed in his people, in their courage and devotion, and they did not disappoint. Their actions were precise and effective. Every explosion, every stopped echelon resonated with pain in the enemy's logistics. Orsha, turned into ruins, came alive again. But now, it was a life of resistance, a life of struggle. And at the head of this struggle stood he, Konstantin Zaslonov, the railwayman who became a partisan, whose name would soon thunder throughout occupied Belarus, striking terror into the enemy. He returned to the inferno to ignite it even more strongly. From the moment Zaslonov's return to Orsha until his forced departure into the forest, the underground group under his leadership launched a real railway war. Their sabotage wasn't just acts of sabotage. These were precise, calculated strikes at the very heart of German logistics. In a few months of work in the depot, Zaslonov and his comrades managed to disable about 200 locomotives. Imagine, almost 200 steel machines, which were supposed to carry tanks, artillery, ammunition to the front, turned into a pile of useless metal. Each such locomotive was not just a loss for the Germans, it was a delay in supply. It was a weakening of the attacking forces of the Wehrmacht. It was time gained for our soldiers on the front line. But locomotives were only part of the overall picture. The underground fighters destroyed more than 200 freight and passenger cars. Think about it. These are huge volumes of cargo that did not reach the front. thousands of soldiers who did not make it to the front line. Special attention was paid to tankers. 43 tankers with fuel, lubricants, and chemicals were blown up or disabled. This was a direct blow to the mobility of German troops, their ability to maneuver. Without fuel, tanks and trucks turned into stationary targets, and aviation remained on the ground. In addition to rolling stock, the infrastructure itself was also attacked. 3 railway bridges were blown up and burned. Bridges are the arteries of the railway. Their destruction paralyzes movement for many days, or even weeks. This meant that entire echelons with reinforcements and equipment got stuck at stations, creating huge traffic jams and becoming easy prey for aviation. Dozens of wagons with food, ammunition, and medicines were also destroyed, which directly affected the combat effectiveness of German units. Soldiers were left without food, without ammunition, without the ability to treat the wounded. How did these sabotages affect the ability of the German army to conduct military operations on the Eastern Front? Firstly, it was a colossal delay in the transfer of troops and equipment. Every blown-up locomotive, every sabotaged track, meant that the Germans had to divert resources for repairs instead of sending them to the front. Secondly, it was a direct weakening of supplies. The German army was a machine that required constant replenishment. Without fuel, ammunition, and food, this machine began to stall, losing its power. Thirdly, Zaslonov's sabotages created an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty in the enemy's rear. The Germans could not be sure of the security of their communications, which forced them to divert significant forces to guard the railways instead of using them at the front. And finally, it was a powerful moral blow. The occupiers saw that even in the deep rear, in a seemingly completely controlled city, organized resistance was operating. This undermined their spirit, made them doubt their victory. Statistics speak for themselves. The activities of Zaslonov's group in Orsha were not just a set of individual acts of sabotage. It was a purposeful, strategically important work that inflicted tangible damage on the enemy and contributed to the overall victory. Every blown-up locomotive, every damaged wagon, every sabotaged bridge brought that day closer. But the Germans were not going to put up with such losses. They began a real hunt for the elusive railway partisans. The Germans were not stupid. Too many accidental accidents, too many breakdowns, too many blown-up echelons. Too much smoke over Orsha when there should have been no fires. German special services, in particular the Gestapo and Abwehr, could not ignore such systematic damage. They quickly realized that behind all this was not just scattered sabotage, but a well-organized underground network. The hunt began. A hunt for the one who dared to challenge their invincible war machine. The first warning bells sounded when new faces began to appear in the depot. Too attentive, too suspicious. These were agents of German counterintelligence, infiltrated under the guise of workers or employees. Their task was simple: to identify the organizers, to find those behind the sabotage. The methods they used were brutal and sophisticated. Interrogations with torture, provocations, surveillance of every suspicious step. Roundups and mass arrests began in Orsha. Soon, the punitive organs of the Hitlerites arrested several people from Zaslonov's underground group. This was a terrible blow. Zaslonov understood that every arrest was a potential threat to the entire organization. Under torture, people could break, give others away. And although his comrades showed incredible courage, enduring all trials, the danger grew every day. Every morning Zaslonov woke up with the thought that this day could be his last. The pressure on Zaslonov intensified. His name, or rather his false name, engineer Konstantin Petrovich, began to appear in Gestapo reports. His actions were too effective to go unnoticed. The Germans began to suspect that someone much more dangerous was hiding under the guise of a loyal engineer. Covert surveillance began on him. Every step he took was under control. One day, something happened that became the last straw. Thanks to the vigilance of his comrades, Zaslonov learned of an impending arrest. The information came at the last moment. The Germans already knew his true identity and were waiting for a convenient moment. This meant one thing: remaining in Orsha was mortally dangerous, not only for himself, but for everyone associated with him. The decision was made quickly, but it was not easy for him. Zaslonov understood that he had to leave, to go into the forest to continue the fight. He could not allow his arrest to jeopardize the entire underground network that he had built so long and painstakingly. With a heavy heart, he parted with a part of his group who were to remain in the city and continue their work. On the same day, at the end of February 1942, Konstantin Zaslonov, along with the most active members of the underground, left Orsha forever. They went into the unknown, into the cold, snow-covered forest, to create a new hotbed of resistance there. This was not a retreat, but a strategic maneuver. Going into the forest meant transitioning to a new stage of struggle, to open partisan warfare. Zaslonov understood that now his methods would change. Instead of covert sabotage in the depot, a full-scale war on the rails would begin, with ambushes, explosions, and direct clashes. From an underground engineer, he was turning into a partisan detachment commander who was to become a thorn in the side of the German occupiers. He went into the forest to become Uncle Kostya, a legendary commander whose name would soon be known throughout Belarus. The beginning of 1942. The cold February air chilled to the bone, but for Konstantin Zaslonov and his comrades, it was just another challenge. After the Gestapo traced the underground group, staying in Orsha was suicide. There was only one way out: to go into the forest. This was not a flight, but a strategic move, a transition to a new, open stage of the struggle. Thus began the story of Uncle Kostya's detachment. Leaving the city, Zaslonov took with him the most devoted and trusted people, those who did not flinch in the face of danger, who proved their readiness to fight to the end. These were engineers, fitters, railwaymen, who just yesterday were blowing up echelons from the inside and now were preparing for battles in the open air. Initially, the detachment was small, only a few dozen people, but each of them was worth 10. The structure of the detachment was formed on the fly, in the harsh conditions of partisan life. Zaslonov, who possessed not only engineering talent but also outstanding organizational skills, quickly brought order. The detachment was divided into combat groups, each of which had its own commander. Discipline was iron, but based not on fear, but on mutual respect and awareness of a common goal. The armament was initially scarce: a few rifles, captured pistols, homemade grenades. But Zaslonov's partisans were inventive. They used everything they could get from the enemy, or make with their own hands. The main weapon remained the knowledge and experience of railwaymen, explosives, which they skillfully disguised, and of course, Zaslonov's famous coal mines. The tactics of Uncle Kostya's detachment were based on surprise and precision of strikes. They did not engage in open battles with superior enemy forces, preferring refugees, ambushes, and sabotage on communications. The main target remained the railway, the main artery for supplying German troops. The detachment grew rapidly. News of Uncle Kostya and his successful operations spread throughout the occupied territory. Local residents, Red Army soldiers who had broken out of encirclement, and those who had escaped captivity joined them. People went to Zaslonov because they believed him, because they saw in him a true leader capable of fighting back against the enemy. In a few months, the small detachment turned into a large partisan brigade, numbering hundreds of fighters. Zaslonov did not just command, he trained his people, shared his experience, and instilled in them the spirit of fearlessness and patriotism. His brigade became a real terror for the occupiers. Every day they struck the enemy, blowing up trains, destroying railway tracks, demolishing bridges, attacking German garrisons. The name Uncle Kostya struck terror into the Germans, and for local residents, it became a symbol of hope and resistance. This was not just a struggle for survival. It was a systematic, strategically important work that brought victory closer day by day. Zaslonov, a railwayman by calling, became a partisan commander by necessity, and he honorably fulfilled his new, dangerous mission. Zaslonov's brigade, which became a terror for the Nazis, was not limited to sabotage on railway tracks. Their combat operations were multifaceted and always aimed at inflicting maximum damage on the enemy. Konstantin Zaslonov, a former railway worker, proved himself to be an outstanding tactician and commander, capable of making unconventional decisions. One of the key directions was the quote, which Zaslonov elevated to a new level. Blasting railway tracks, destroying switches, annihilating station facilities, all of this became part of meticulously planned operations. The partisans acted quickly and audaciously. For example, one night, Zaslonov's group mined a section of track where an ammunition train was expected to pass. The explosion was so powerful that fragments of wagons scattered for hundreds of meters, and traffic on that section was paralyzed for several days. But the rail war was only part of their arsenal. Ambushes on German convoys became commonplace. Partisans hid in the forests, waiting for trucks with supplies or soldiers. Sudden fire, a short battle, and the enemy suffered losses, deprived of valuable cargo and manpower. For example, in one such raid, a convoy of 5 trucks carrying food for the German garrison was destroyed. The partisans not only captured trophies, but also dealt a serious moral blow to the enemy. Attacks on enemy garrisons, though riskier, were carried out with the same audacity. Small detachments of Zaslonov penetrated the territory of seemingly well-guarded objects. Their targets were ammunition depots, fuel depots, and headquarters. During one such raid, the partisans managed to destroy a fuel depot, which led to a massive fire and panic among German soldiers. Zaslonov paid special attention to synchronizing his actions with the Red Army. He understood that partisan warfare was not an end in itself, but a tool that should serve the common cause of victory. Information about the movement of German troops, the condition of railway tracks, and the locations of reserves. All of this was promptly transmitted to Moscow. This data helped the Soviet command plan offensive operations and deliver more precise strikes against the enemy. For example, before major offensive operations of the Red Army, Zaslonov's brigade intensified its activities, carrying out massive explosions on railways leading to the front. This led to delays in the transfer of German reinforcements, created chaos in their logistics, and gave our troops a valuable advantage. Zaslonov's men skillfully used the tactic of flying detachments. Small groups quickly appeared, struck, and just as quickly disappeared, dissolving into the forests. This prevented the Germans from concentrating forces to counter them and kept them in constant tension. The activities of Zaslonov's brigade became a vivid example of effective partisan warfare on transport. Every blown-up rail, every detonated train, every destroyed German vehicle. It was a contribution to the common victory. It was the weakening of the enemy and the približenia of the day when the occupiers would be expelled from our land. But how did these seemingly local operations affect the overall strategic situation on the Eastern Front? The answer to this question lies in understanding the logistics of the German war machine. The activities of Konstantin Zaslonov and his partisan brigade on the railways of Belarus held strategic importance, extending far beyond localized acts of sabotage. To understand this, one must envision the German war machine as a colossal organism whose vital arteries were the railways. It was through these arteries that the entire eastern group of forces was supplied. And when Zaslonov began striking at these arteries, the entire system started to falter. Military historical analysis reveals that disruptions to railway transportation created genuine bottlenecks in the German supply system. Imagine, the front needed equipment, ammunition, food, medicine. Yet echelons carrying all this would stand at stations because a bridge ahead was blown up, or the tracks were mined, or locomotives were disabled. This wasn't merely a delay, it was a catastrophe for an advancing army. For instance, one of Zaslonov's most crucial tasks was to impede the transfer of reinforcements. The Germans constantly maneuvered reserves, shifting divisions from one sector of the front to another to plug gaps or reinforce an offensive. Every time partisans blew up tracks or derailed a troop train, it meant these reinforcements would not arrive on time. Days, and sometimes weeks, were spent restoring tracks, reforming echelons, and finding bypass routes. And in the rapidly changing circumstances on the Eastern Front, these days and weeks were priceless. They gave the Red Army time to regroup, to prepare defenses, to organize counterattacks. Historians have calculated that the actions of Zaslonov and other railway partisans significantly hampered the supply of German troops near Moscow in 1941, playing a role in the failure of the Blitzkrieg. The same can be said for subsequent key battles. For example, on the eve of the Battle of Stalingrad, when every ton of cargo, every soldier counted, partisan sabotage on communications leading to the front became a real nightmare for the German command. They were forced to divert enormous forces to guard the railways, for repairs, and to combat the partisans. These diverted forces were soldiers who could have been at the front, equipment that could have been fighting, resources that could have gone to strengthen attacking units. Instead, they were spent fighting an invisible enemy in the rear. This was a kind of second front opened by the partisans, exhausting the enemy and weakening his combat effectiveness. Disruptions to railway transportation directly affected the morale of German soldiers. Constant delays, shortages of ammunition, lack of food, all this undermined their belief in victory. Soldiers at the front knew that the rear was unreliable, that every shipment might not arrive. This bred panic and insecurity. Ultimately, the activities of Zaslonov and thousands of other partisans waging a rail war became one of the most important factors influencing the outcome of key battles of the Great Patriotic War. They not only inflicted direct damage on the enemy, but also created a strategic advantage for the Red Army, slowing down the offensive, disrupting supplies, and demoralizing the enemy. This was an invisible war, a war on steel highways, where every blown-up rail, every burned echelon brought the great victory closer. Konstantin Zaslonov, a railwayman by profession, became one of the main heroes of this war, a man whose actions had colossal strategic significance. But his path, like the path of many heroes, was thorny and dangerous. And soon the day will come when he will fight his last battle. Autumn of 1942. The cold November wind had already brought the first frosts, but for Konstantin Zaslonov and his partisans, this was just a continuation of their harsh struggle. Their brigade, which had become a true terror for the occupiers, constantly moved, striking now in one place, now in another. The Germans, irritated by constant sabotage and losses, intensified their punitive operations. They threw large forces into the forests, striving at any cost to destroy the elusive Uncle Kostya and his detachment. On November 14, 1942, Zaslonov's brigade stopped for a rest in the area of the village of Kupovat, located in the Senensky district of the Vitebsk region. It was a relatively quiet place, but the Germans, having received information from traders, knew about the partisans' location. Early in the morning, the village was surrounded by superior forces of punitive units. These were not just soldiers. These were well-trained, armed to the teeth SS men and policemen, specially trained to fight partisans. The situation was critical. The partisans found themselves in a tight ring. Zaslonov, instantly assessing the situation, understood. There was nowhere to retreat. A fight had to be made. He gave the order to take up a circular defense. His voice was calm, but a steely determination could be felt in it. The battle began with fierce shooting. The Germans attacked wave after wave, trying to crush the partisan ranks. Automatic rifles rattled, machine guns chattered, mortar shells exploded. Zaslonov, as always, was in the most dangerous sectors, inspiring the fighters by his personal example. He shot accurately, gave clear orders, and directed the defense. Seeing his comrades fall one after another under enemy fire, he understood that there was almost no chance of a breakthrough. The ring was tightening. Ammunition was running out. At some point in the battle, when the partisans' strength was already exhausted and the Germans were preparing for a decisive assault, Zaslonov received a severe wound. A bullet hit him in the chest. He fell, but did not lose consciousness. Gathering his last strength, he rose, understanding that captivity was not an option. Captivity for him, the legendary, would mean not only torture and death, but also a threat to the entire partisan network, to the fates of his comrades. Clenching a pistol in his hand, he made the only possible decision for himself. He could not allow himself to be taken alive. He could not give the enemy the opportunity to triumph over him. With his last breath, he shot himself in the temple. It was a heroic, tragic act, dictated not by despair, but by an unyielding will to fight and loyalty to ideals. He died without submitting to the enemy, without giving them a single chance for interrogation and subsequent reprisal. Konstantin Zaslonov's body was found by the partisans who managed to break out of the encirclement. In the conditions of the fiercest battle, under incessant fire, they carried out the body of their commander. He was buried nearby, in the forest, in a mass grave, along with other fallen comrades. These were modest but deeply respectful funerals. The first honors to the hero were paid immediately. News of his death quickly spread among the partisans. Zaslonov's name became a banner of struggle, a symbol of courage and defiance. His feat inspired thousands of people to resist. Although formal recognition came later, for his comrades and for the entire people, he was already a true hero then. His death, though tragic, became a continuation of his struggle, a testament to those who remained in the ranks. The death of Konstantin Zaslonov, this courageous railway partisan, did not go unnoticed. His feat, his self-sacrifice, are forever etched into the history of the Great Patriotic War. And the first to acknowledge his heroism was the Soviet people, and then the state. Already on May 8, 1942, long before his last battle, Konstantin Zaslonov was awarded the Order of Lenin. This was a recognition of his outstanding merits in organizing underground work and sabotage on the railway. But the main award, the culmination of his life's feat, was his posthumous conferment of the title Hero of the Soviet Union. This happened on March 7, 1943, when the war was still raging, and Zaslonov's exploits had already become a legend. The Gold Star, the highest award in the country, became a symbol of his courage, his unbending will, and his selfless devotion to the motherland. Zaslonov's memory is immortalized not only in state awards, but also in monuments that stand throughout Belarus and beyond. One of the most famous monuments is erected in Orsha, where he worked and began his underground activities. The sculpture of Zaslonov, gazing into the distance, reminds of his determination and readiness to fight to the end. In Minsk, at the hero's grave, a monument is erected to which people still come to honor his memory. Streets in hundreds of cities and towns bear his name. In every street named Zaslonov, in every corner where his name is heard, lives the memory of a man who was not afraid to challenge the enemy. Schools, pioneer camps, railway stations, all bear the name of Konstantin Zaslonov, reminding the younger generation of the feat of their ancestors. In Orsha, in the building of the former locomotive depot where Zaslonov was the chief, a museum has been created. Here, his personal belongings, documents, photographs, and samples of those very coal mines that terrorized the occupiers are carefully preserved. Each exhibit in the museum is a living testament to his struggle, his ingenuity, and his fearlessness. The museum has become a place of pilgrimage for those who want to touch history and understand the scale of this man's feat. And of course, Zaslonov's personality found its reflection in literature and cinema. Books, poems, and stories have been written about him. One of the most famous films dedicated to his feat is Konstantin Zaslonov, filmed in 1949. This film became a classic of Soviet cinema, and the image of Zaslonov, embodied on screen, became a symbol of popular resistance. In literature, his image often appears as an example of an indomitable spirit, courage, and self-sacrifice. He is a hero who did not flinch in the face of the enemy, who gave his life for the freedom of the motherland. His story is not just a biography, it is a lesson in courage, a lesson in patriotism, a lesson in how one person can change the course of history. The memory of Konstantin Zaslonov lives on to this day. He remains a symbol of the railway partisan movement, a man whose name has become synonymous with all who fought for the freedom of their land. His legacy is not only awards and monuments, it is a living memory in the hearts of people, an example for future generations. And this example continues to inspire, reminding us that even in the darkest times, there is room for heroism and hope. We have come a long way, from the childhood years of Konstantin Zaslonov to his heroic death and the perpetuation of his memory. But what can we take away from his story today? What lessons of railway guerrilla warfare are relevant in the 21st century? The activities of Zaslonov and his comrades are a unique experience of resistance that proved even a small but well-organized group of people is capable of inflicting colossal damage on a superior enemy. He showed that strategically important infrastructure such as railways is not only an artery for supplies, but also a potentially vulnerable point. In modern conflicts where hybrid wars and asymmetric threats have become the norm, this lesson takes on particular relevance. Transport infrastructure, be it railways, highways, or sea routes, remains critically important for any army and economy, and it continues to be a target. Zaslonov's story teaches us that effective struggle does not always require superiority in weapons. Much more important are ingenuity, knowledge of the enemy, his weaknesses, and, of course, high morale. Zaslonov's coal mines are not just a technical invention. They are a symbol of how a creative approach and a deep understanding of one's craft can turn into a formidable weapon. The relevance of this experience is also evident in the context of transport infrastructure security. Today, as the world faces threats of terrorism and sabotage, Zaslonov's lessons remind us of the need for continuous improvement of defense systems, the importance of vigilance, and readiness to counter the most unexpected attacks. But the significance of Zaslonov's personality goes beyond purely military analysis. For Belarusian and Russian historical memory, he is not just a war hero, but a symbol of the indomitable spirit of the people, their capacity for self-sacrifice for freedom. His name is a reminder that, even in the most hopeless situations, there is room for struggle, for hope, for victory. Zaslonov is an example of a man who did not stand aside when his homeland was in danger. He accepted the challenge, dedicated all his strength, knowledge, and talent to fighting the enemy. His story is about how one person, driven by patriotism and a sense of duty, can inspire thousands, organize resistance, and change the course of events. His feat is not just a page in a history textbook. It is a living example of courage and resilience for future generations. It teaches us to value peace, to remember the price paid for it, and to be ready to defend our homeland. Konstantin Zaslonov, a railway worker who became a partisan, an inventor, a commander, a hero. His life is a vivid example of how an ordinary person can become a legend, how his actions can affect the destinies of millions. And his lessons continue to resonate through the decades, reminding us of the strength of spirit, the significance of every contribution to the common struggle, and the inseparable connection of man with his land.